Hello students, this is Dr. Utkarsha Thakre from Vidya Pratishthan's Arts, Commerce and Science College. We'll continue the chapter Reproduction in Lower and Higher Plants. This is the second video of the chapter. In the last video or in the last lecture, we have seen the development of male gametophyte. Now we'll start with the development of female gametophyte with the details of gynoecium wool. Okay, so for that, let me make the slide full screen. Yes, gynoecium is the female reproductive hormone. Now, this gynoecium consists of carpel or pistil as an individual member. Each carpel or pistil is made up of three parts, that is basal swollen ovary, a style, and a stigma. The gynoecium whole may consist of a single carpel. It is called as monocarpellary gynoecium. When it consists of many carpels, means more than one carpels, accordingly called as bicarpellary, tricarpellary, tetracarpellary. Means when has two carpels, bicarpellary, three tricarpellary, four tetracarpellary. Many carpels, it is called as polycarpellary. When many carpels are present, this carpel, there are two possibilities. The carpels may be fused or they may be free. When carpels in the gynoecium whole, they are fused with each other, the condition is called as syncarpous condition. Means the gynoecium is called as syncarpous. When the carpels are free, the condition is called as apocarpous. Multicarpellary apocarpous gynoecium is seen in case of rose, in case of Michaelia champaka, मराठीमध्ये आपण त्याला चाफा असं म्हणतो, त्याच्यामध्ये apocarpous condition असते. The carpels are free from each other in the ovary, in the gynoecium form. In case of some of the varieties, the carpels, they fuse together. Condition is called as syncarpous. Syncarpous condition is that condition where the carpels, many carpels together forms the gynoecium, and our carpels, they are fused with one another. The condition is called as syncarpous. For example, in case of Hibiscus rosa sinensis, the gynoecium is pentacarpellary syncarpous. Means 5 carpels are there, all of them fuse. You can take the section of ovary, you see the 5 compartments in the ovary, it indicates that 5 carpels are fused. And the gynoecium is pentacarpellary syncarpous. The syncarpous condition is seen in case of brinjal, in case of tomato, then in case of lycopersicon, different hibiscus genera. For example, Hibiscus rosa sinensis, Hibiscus esculentus, ज्याला तुम्ही भेंडी असं म्हणता. So here the gynoecium is syncarpous. Ovary is the important reproductive part of a pistil, within which the ovas or ovules are produced. It is a female gametangium because inside the ovule, the female gamete, it is present in protected condition. The ovary may contain a single ovule or may contain many ovules. When it contains a single ovule, as in case of mango seed, if you break the mango seed, you can see a single seed within it. So it is uni-ovate. In case of monocots, the seed is the fruit is uni-ovate. Only one seed is there, means which is the modification of an ovule. So single ovule is present found within the ovary. When the ovary contains a single ovule, it is called as uni-ovate. And when it contains many ovules inside, it is called as multi-ovate. For example, in case of sweet pea, number of ovules are present along the marginal placenta. In case of citrus, that is lemon, number of ovules are attached to the central axis. In case of Hibiscus rosa sinensis, or in case of Hibiscus esculentus, means bhendi, lady's finger, many ovules are attached to the central placenta. So the ovary is multi-ovate, means contains so many ovas or ovules. An ovule is important because it contains the embryo sac, which contains the female gamete, which plays a key role during fertilization. So we have to study the structure of ovule in detail. In your text, HSC board textbook, orthotropous ovule has been discussed. Actually, there are different types of ovule found in case of angiosperm, depending on the position of ovule body or position of embryo sac inside the ovule body. There are different types. There are orthotropous, anatropous, amphitropous, compylotropous, hemitropous, and cercinotropous. These types we are discussing here just for your reference. Actually, in the syllabus only anatropous ovule is discussed. Now, how the orthotropous ovule appears like this as shown in the diagram, where the micropyle, chalaza, and the stalk of the ovule, that is funicle, lie in one vertical line. That is a orthotropous ovule. सरळ उभा असलेला ovule असतो हा, त्याला आपण orthotropous ovule म्हणतो. In anatropous ovule, the micropyle and chalaza lie in one vertical line, but the funiculus, that is the stalk of the ovule, is present just adjacent to the micropyle, as seen over here. That is the anatropous ovule. Amphitropous ovule, it is somewhat curved, and ovule body is curved, and micropyle and chalaza, they are not strictly in the straight line, and ovulus is bit curved. That is amphitropous. In compylotropous ovule, the ovule itself is curved, bent, so that in such a way the ovule is bent that the micropyle, the ovule is, you found can see that the ovule has been bent in such a way that this micropyle and the chalaza cannot come in straight line. अशा सरळ लाईन मध्ये येऊ शकत नाही. That ovule type is called as compylotropous. In case of hemitropous ovule, the ovule body is transversely placed. Ovule body itself is transverse. So automatically the embryo sac is also transverse, and the ovule body and the funicle, they are at right angles to each other. 90 अंशाच्या कोनामध्ये तुम्हाला फ्युनिकलच्या 90 अंशाच्या कोनामध्ये तुम्हाला ओव्हल बॉडी दिसते. So this is hemitropous. In case of cercinotropous, initially during the initial growth, the ovule is orthotropous like this. There's a micropyle and a chalaza like this. All of a sudden, on one side, there is a rapid growth and the ovule get inverted. It appears inverted. That ovule is called as cercinotropous ovule. It appears as shown in the diagram. These are the different types of ovules seen in case of the angiospermic plants, but the most common type is of anatropous ovule that we will discuss over here, since it is a part of your HSC board syllabus. Now, how you can define anatropous ovule? The ovule in which the micropyle and chalaza and embryo sac lie in one vertical line, but the micropyle and the funicus, they are present adjacent to each other. They lie side by side. The ovule is called as anatropous ovule. Now we'll see the structure. The ovule is attached to the, it is present inside the ovary. It is attached with the help to the placenta inside the ovary. What is placenta? It is a parenchymatous tissue. Parenchymatous sterile tissue. It is not a fertile tissue, to which the ovule body is attached with the help of a stalk called as funicle. Either or sometimes, if the funicle is absent, directly the ovule body is attached to the placenta. The stalk of the ovule is called as funicle, and the ovule with funicle is called as funiculate ovule, and that without funicle is called as sessile ovule. The ovule without stalk is called as sessile ovule, and the body is directly attached to the placenta. The ovule body, the funicle, is attached to the ovule body at a point that is called as hilum. So a hilum is a point of attachment of ovule body with the funicle. Now, if you think of an ovule body, in the center of the ovule body, in the immature condition, in the mature condition, you can see the embryo sac. In the immature condition, in the central area, only the diploid parenchymatous tissue is present. That is called as nucellus. Towards the maturity, one of the cell of nucellus act as a mother cell, and megaspore mother cell ultimately forms the embryo sac. So the embryo sac can be seen in the mature ovule, but initially in the immature condition, in the center of the ovule, there is presence of a diploid tissue having the chromosome number 12 is present. That tissue is called as nucellus. This nucellus is covered and protected by the protective covering called as integument. So integument is a protective covering on nucellus. It is made up of two layers, outer integument and inner integument. The outer covering, outer integument, inner covering called as inner integument. Now this integument covers and encircles the ovule body in all sides except at its anterior part. Here it leaves a small opening towards the anterior part. The integuments leave a small opening that is called as micropyle. And the end of the ovule is called as micropylar end. The part of the ovule just opposite to the micropylar end is called as chalaza. The part of the ovule just opposite to the micropylar end is called as chalaza, and the end as the chalazal end. That is the base of ovule. Chalaza is the base of ovule. In the middle at maturity, there is formation of a 7-celled 8-nucleate embryo cell. And just prior to the fertilization, it is 7-celled and 7-nucleate. That embryo sac, also called as female gametophyte, it is a 7-celled 8-nucleate, or just prior to the fertilization, it is 7-celled 7-nucleate structure. It consists of 3 cells towards the micropylar end called as egg apparatus. The egg apparatus consists of a centrally placed large cell, or that is a female gamete known as egg or female gamete. This egg or female gamete, it is covered and protected by a pair of cells with hair-like outgrowths. That hair-like outgrowth called as filiform apparatus. These pair of cells which guard and protect the egg cell are called as synergids. So synergids are having the filiform apparatus. They cover and protect the egg cell, and synergids and egg cell together form the egg apparatus. They are present towards the micropylar end. Towards the chalazal end, there is presence of 3 cells, 3 haploid cells. They together forms the antipodals. They are nutritive cells and they disorganize towards the end of fertilization. Now in the center of cell, initially 2 polar nuclei are present. 2 nuclei are present, they are called as polar nuclei. Towards the maturity, they fuse to form a secondary nucleus. So here the polar nuclei are fused and the secondary nucleus is seen, which is a fusion of 2 polar nuclei. Now the embryo sac is 7-celled 7-nucleate. Such is the structure of embryo sac and the structure of ovule. Now we'll see the function of each part of ovule. Placenta is a sterile parenchymatous tissue to which the ovule body is attached with the help of funicle or without funicle. Funicle, it is stalk of ovule. It attaches the ovule body to the placenta. One function. Second function is it conducts the nutrition coming through the placenta to the ovule body. That is the second function of funicle. Hilum attaches the funicle to the ovule body. Function of integument, it is a protective covering on nucellus. So it is protective in function. Then function of nucellus. Nucellus is a diploid tissue. First of all, it produces the embryo sac. So first function is the production of embryo sac. And secondly, it is a nutritive tissue. Once the embryo sac is produced, it also provides nourishment for the growth and development of embryo sac. So the second function of nucellus is to provide the nourishment to the developing embryo sac. Now we'll see the functions of different components of embryo sac. The egg present towards the micropylar end, it acts as a female gamete, take part in reproduction. Synergids, they cover, protect, guard the egg cell. Antipodals, they are nutritive cells. They provide nutrition to the growing embryo sac, and ultimately towards the end of fertilization, they disorganize. Secondary nucleus take part in reproduction. How? Out of the 2 male gamete, one fuses with the egg, and the second male gamete which left behind, it fuses with the secondary nucleus, form the primary endosperm nucleus, which forms the endosperm of seed. So these are the different functions. Now 2 more functions are left, function of micropyle and function of chalaza. Micropyle provides passage for the entry of pollen tube during the fertilization. Pollen tubes comes with the two non-motile male gametes. So to this pollen tube, which is coming with the two more non-motile male gametes, macropyle use the passage for its entry into the ovule or into the female gametophyte. Chalaza is the base of ovule and its function is to produce the integuments, that is the covering on the nucellus. They are produced by the chalaza. So these are the functions of different components or parts of ovule. Now next concept is the megasporogenesis. We have seen the microsporogenesis, that there we have defined microsporogenesis as the process of formation of microspore from the microspore mother cell. Same way we can define the megasporogenesis. Megaspores are produced, genesis of megaspores takes place. Where from the megaspores are produced? From the megaspore mother cells. It is one of the cell of nucellus towards the micropylar end. So from the megaspore mother cell, which is diploid in nature, megaspores are generated or produced by the process of meiosis. That process is called as megasporogenesis. The process of formation of megaspore from megaspore mother cell by the division of meiosis, it is called as megasporogenesis. Okay, now we'll see in the next slide how the megasporogenesis occur and how further the female gametophyte development is continued. Now, if suppose this is a megaspore mother cell which is derived from the nucellus, micropylar end of nucellus. It is a mother cell, therefore it is diploid in nature. The chromosome number is 2n. It undergo meiosis and produce 4 haploid cells. These are the megaspore. Megaspore mother cell produce the megaspore in a linear tetrad. Out of these 4 megaspores produced, 3 megaspore towards the micropylar end, they disorganize, they degenerate, they get aborted. And only one that is towards the chalazal end remains functional. And that functional megaspore then developed into the female gametophyte. That means a single megaspore mother cell, though it produces the 4 megaspore, all of them cannot generate or cannot develop into the female gametophyte. So from the meiosis of one megaspore mother cell, ultimately only one female gametophyte is produced because only one megaspore remains functional. This is not the case in case of male gametophyte development. From the microspore mother cell, 4 microspores are produced and all the macrospore remains functional and every of the macrospore can develop into the male gametophyte. Means from a single microspore mother cell, 4 male gametophytes are produced. But in case of female gametophyte development, from a single megaspore mother cell, only one functional megaspore is produced and only one female gametophyte is generated or it is produced. This is what the difference between the male gametophyte development and female gametophyte development, which you have to keep in mind, because that you have to keep as a knowledge for when we solve the problem on this chapter regarding the fertilization and formation of seeds, fruits, etc. Okay. Now this is a functional megaspore which we get. Now the functional megaspore that is further germinated, that undergo further mitosis, because it is haploid now. So it will never undergo meiosis. It undergo mitosis and ultimately produce the female gametophyte. Sequentially, this nucleus of the functional megaspore sequentially undergo 3 mitotic divisions, which are not followed by cytokinesis. This is called as free nuclear division. When the nuclear division is not followed by cytokinesis, it is called as free nuclear division. The nucleus of functional megaspore undergo free nuclear division up to the formation of 8 nuclei. First nuclear mitosis leads to the formation of 2 nuclei. Second mitosis leads to the formation of 4 nuclei. And third mitosis leads to the formation of 8 nuclei. Out of these 8 nuclei produced, 4 move towards the chalazal end, means one pole, and 4 towards the another pole, that is the micropylar. Means now 4 nuclei are present at one pole, 4 towards the another pole. Out of these 4 nuclei at each pole, one from each pole shift here in the center. Since the nuclei is shifting from the polar ends, they are called as polar nuclei. Two polar nuclei coming from two different poles meet here in the center. These are called as polar nuclei. Now three nuclei are left at each pole. Three towards the micropolar end, three towards the chalazal end. The three nuclei towards the chalazal end, they get reorganized, undergo cytokinesis, form their own cell wall, and forms the antipodals. While three towards the micropolar end, they also reorganize to form the egg apparatus, consisting of a centrally placed egg covered and protected by the synergids with the filiform apparatus. And in the center, there is presence of two polar nuclei. Now the embryo sac is 7-celled and 8 nuclei. Now count how the 7 cells, 3 cells, 6, and a parent cell. It is 7th. So the 7 cells. 8 nuclei, 3 nuclei, 3 plus 3, 6 nuclei, 7 and 8 nuclei. So in this way, the embryo sac now, initially, when it is formed, it is 7-cell and 8 nuclei. Towards the maturity, it becomes 7-cell, 7 nuclei, because the two polar nuclei, they fuse to form a diploid secondary nucleus or the definitive nucleus. Just prior to the fertilization. आता fertilization होणार आहे, त्याच्यापूर्वी हे सेकंड दोन पोलार न्यूक्लियाय फ्यूज होतात आणि त्यांच्यापासून एक सेकंडरी न्यूक्लियस तयार होतं, जे दोन हॅप्लॉइड न्यूक्लियसचं फ्युजन आहे, म्हणून त्याची प्लॉइडी असते 2n. So diploid definitive nucleus is produced by the fusion of two polar nuclei. Now the embryo sac, which is just to enter the fertilization, ready to enter the fertilization, is now 7-celled and 7 nucleate. 3 cells forming the antipodals towards the chalazal end, 3 cells forming the egg apparatus towards the micropolar end, and the definitive and the parent cell. In the center, there is a single nucleus, that is a definitive nucleus, which is a fusion of two polar nuclei. In this way, the mature embryo sac consists of 3 antipodals towards the chalazal end, egg apparatus towards the micropolar end, and the definitive diploid definitive nucleus in the center of the embryo sac. Now the same we will revise in the next slide so that you can get the better idea of the development of male gametophyte. Now this is the ovary of a flower inside which ovules are produced. Now this ovule, one of the cell of ovule, especially of the nucellus, act as a megaspore mother cell. Nucellus cells are diploid. So megaspore mother cell is also diploid. It undergo meiosis, produce the haploid 4 megaspore. Out of this 4 megaspore produce lower 3, those present towards the micropolar end. They disorganize, they degenerate, and only one remains functional. The functional megaspore undergo free nuclear division, which is not followed by the division of cytoplasm, and form 8 cells. These 8 nuclei. These 8 nuclei, they shift towards the 2 pole, 4 towards one pole, 4 towards the another pole. Means 4 towards the chalazal end, 4 towards the micropolar end. Then one nucleus from each pole shift here in the center and known as polar nuclei. These two, one from chalazal end, one from micropolar end. Shift in the center known as polar nuclei. 3 cell nuclei towards the micropolar end forms the egg apparatus with the egg and 2 synergids. While 3 nuclei towards the chalazal end reorganize to form the antipodal cells. And in this way, the 7-celled 8 nucleate embryo sac is produced. So now I think you might have understood the process of development of female gametophyte. Now we'll switch on to the next topic. Very easy topic that you have studied during your high school studies. That is pollination. मराठीमध्ये तुम्ही त्याला परागण असं म्हटलेलं आहे आणि दोन प्रकार पण शिकला, स्वपरागण आणि परपरागण. Botanically, it is referred as pollination. How you can define pollination? Transfer of pollen grains from anther to the receptive stigma of same or another flower is called as pollination. Now, receptive is the important word, because if receptive means ready to receive. If the stigma is not ready to receive the pollen grains coming from the anther, then it will discard the anthers and pollination will not be successful. Or the stigma will wither away and the pollination will not be successful. So if the stigma is ready to receive, means it is receptive, then only the pollination is successful. So the receptive word is important. This is a general definition of pollination, the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the receptive stigma of the same or other flower from the same or other variety. It is called as pollination. It is the essential prerequisite for fertilization. That is the essential step before which is expected to occur before fertilization. It is a prerequisite for fertilization. Without that, fertilization has no meaning, or fertilization will not be successful, because this is the process which brings male and female gametes together for fertilization. So that's why it is said that pollination is the essential prerequisite for fertilization. It is of two types: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination, also called as autogamy. Cross-pollination, also called as allogamy. The type of self-fertilization, self-pollination is autogamy. That autogamy, in case of autogamy, one plant, only one plant is involved, and one flower is involved. One flower from the same plant is involved in the pollination. Means pollen grain from the flower developed on the same plant are deposited on the stigma of the same plant. One flower, one plant. The condition is autogamy. So how you can define? You can use the same pro form of general definition of general pollination. Say how you will define. You can use to define autogamy. Now, autogamy is nothing but the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the receptive stigma of the same flower of the same plant is called as autogamy. It is seen in case of sweet pea, that is Pisum sativum. Watana तुम्ही म्हणता. Second type is geitonogamy. Earlier we used to study geitonogamy is as a type of self-pollination. This is because in autogamy also only one plant is involved. In geitonogamy also only one plant is involved. But the difference is in autogamy, one plant, one flower is involved. Here one plant, two different flowers from the same plant are involved. That is the basic difference. But since what is common, that's one plant, and one more thing is common, that after pollination, when fertilization occurs, the individuals produced, they are genetically identical in autogamy as well as they are genetically identical in case of geitonogamy, because only one plant is involved. If two plants are involved, if they are having different, and definitely they are having different genetic makeup, then the progeny will be genetically dissimilar. But in case of autogamy as well as geitonogamy, only one plant is involved. Therefore, in case of both the types, autogamy and geitonogamy, individuals produced at the end after fertilization, they are genetically similar. Only difference is that in geitonogamy, two different flowers from the same plant are used. In autogamy, same flower from the same plant is involved in the pollination. Now, how you can define geitonogamy? The transfer of pollen grain from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower from the same plant. This is the condition. It's called as geitonogamy. It is seen or practiced in case of plant Cucurbita maxima. Cucurbita maxima या plant मध्ये geitonogamy आपल्याला दिसून येते. The third type is xenogamy. It is a type of cross pollination that is also popularly or technically called as allogamy. The synonymous term for cross pollination is allogamy, where the pollinating agent is expected because it occurs between the two different plants from the same species, though the species is same. Hibiscus rosa sinensis, say for example, Rosa sinensis is the species. Now you know that in case of Hibiscus rosa sinensis, ज्याला तुम्ही जास्वंद असं म्हणतात, त्याच्यामध्ये भरपूर व्हरायटीज आहे. रेड फ्लावर व्हरायटी आहे, व्हाईट फ्लावर व्हरायटी आहे, पिंक फ्लावर व्हरायटी आहे, पर्पल कलर्ड फ्लावर्ड व्हरायटी आहे, येलो फ्लावर्ड व्हरायटी आहे. All of them, they are morphological different because they produce different colored flowers. That is the major difference in the morphology, or yes, in the appearance of the flower. But the species is same. Since they are two different flowers, they produce different colors of flowers on the plant body. Their genetic makeup is different. So if you cross the two different plants of the same species, that is Hibiscus rosa sinensis. Say for example, one is a white flowered variety, another is a red flowered variety. If you make a cross between two, that is called as xenogamy. Means you have to collect the pollen grain from white flower variety and dust it on the stigma of the red, flowers of red flower variety, or vice versa. You can collect the pollen grains from the red flower variety and you can dust it from the stigma of a white flower variety. Then it is called as xenogamy. It occurs within the members of two different flowers of two different plants belonging to the same species. That is known as xenogamy. So how you can define xenogamy? The transfer of pollen grain will go to the same proforma. That is the transfer of pollen grain from anther of the flower from one plant of a species of one species to the stigma of another flower of another species is called as xenogamy. ही कंडिशन जी आहे ही आपण डेफिनेशन मध्ये सांगतो. How you will define a transfer of pollen grain from anther of one flower from one plant of one species to the another flower stigma of another flower belonging to the another species, another plant of another species. It is called as xenogamy, where two different flowers from two different plants belonging to the same species are involved. It is called as xenogamy. I have given you the example of hibiscus. Then hybridization, it is not involved in your textbook. It is not considered as a type of cross pollination. Actually, in hybridization, it is a technique which can be performed artificially. You have to consider one plant as a male plant, another plant as a female plant, and you have to manually collect the pollen grains from the male flower, dust it from those pollen grain on the stigma of a female flower. Before that, you have to emasculate the flower. Bisexual flower मधनं emasculate करायचं म्हणजे bisexual flower मधनं androecium व्होट काढला तर तो female flower होईल आणि bisexual flower मधनं gynoecium व्होट remove केला तर तो मेल फ्लॉवर होईल. अशा प्रकारे तुम्हाला ते प्लांट ते फ्लॉवर्स इमॅस्क्युलेट करावे लागतात. and then you have to transfer the pollen grains of a desired flower of a desired variety to the stigma of your selected female flower. This is done manually and the process is hybridization. So in case of hybridization, two different plants, two different flowers of two different species and two different genera. Say for example, one genera is a tomato plant. त्याचा genus वेगळा आहे, species पण वेगळा आहे. आणि potato, that is a different variety. If you carry a cross between tomato and potato, you get a hybrid which show the character of tomato as well as potato. You can call it as pomato. So that is hybridization. So you can if you consider the tomato variety as a female variety, you have to remove the anthers from the bisexual flower. Only you have to keep the gynoecium. The flower is emasculated. Then you have to go to the tomato plant. You have to make the collect the pollen grains from the bisexual flower of the tomato plant. You have to dust the pollen grains of tomato from the flowers of tomato plant on the stigma of potato flower. Then you have to cover it, allow it to produce, fertilize and produce the seeds. And when you grow the seed, you get the plant which is totally different. We show the few characters of tomato, few characters of potato. That is a hybrid of tomato and potato. We call it as a pomato. In this way, the hybridization experiments can be done. When you study the Mendel's laws of inheritance, you will get the term more clear, hybridization, because Mendel has carried the hybridization experiment in sweet pea. And from that point of view, I have explained here the second type of cross-pollination, that is allogamy, where human being is the agency. In case of cross-pollination is called as allogamy there because it does not occur without any agency. It needs an agent, maybe a biotic agent or abiotic, means living agency is required or non-living agency is required for the transfer of pollen grain from one flower to the another flower. In case of geitonogamy also, why it is not involved in the self-pollination? Because if suppose two different flowers are there, one flower is at the top branch, another flower is at the lower branch. Now the pollen grains from the flower at the top branch is to be carried to the stigma of the flower present on the lower branch. So it may require the agency, and when it is carried with the help of agency, then it is functionally a cross pollination. And since one plant is involved, it is a self pollination. So it is not strictly involved in the self pollination or not in the cross pollination. But since it needs, there is a distance barrier between the two flowers located at the two different parts in the same plant, it is functionally a cross pollination. But since same plant is involved, the individuals produced are genetically similar. In case of cross pollination, two different plants, of two different varieties, two different species are in case of xenogamy, two different species are involved. They have different genetic makeup. The individuals produced, they are genetically different. In hybridization also, we are using two different genera, two different species. So the individuals produced, they are also genetically different. So this is for hybridization. We have discussed just for the sake of reference. I'll switch on to the next slide. Now, in your textbook, some points are given for remembrance, so that you should be conceptually clear. What is chasmogamous flower? The flowers, bisexual flower, where the male and female reproductive holes are exposed when the flower is open. Such flowers are called as chasmogamous flower. These chasmogamous flowers are developed, borne by the self-pollinated flowers and as well as in the cross-pollinated flowers. The main thing is both the sexual holes, that is androecium and gynoecium, both of them, they are exposed. They are open so that the pollination can be carried out. Then the flower is called as a chasmogamous flower, and the condition as chasmogamy. Now next is contrivance. What is contrivance? It is a condition that lead to select a particular type of pollination. Sometimes a plant willingly want to select a particular type of pollination, either self-pollination or cross-pollination. When it select a self-pollination, automatically the plant does not will to select the cross-pollination. So according to the will of plant, the pollination is selected, but for the selection of that particular type of pollination, plant has to develop some certain modification, structural modification in the flower. They are called as adaptations, which help that flower to select a particular type of pollination. So the condition is called as contrivance. So contrivances are the condition that leads to select the particular type of pollination, whether it is the self-pollination or cross-pollination. To select one type of pollination and to avoid another type of pollination. That is called as contrivance, or you can say adaptations. Now, contrivance for self-pollination, that they are homogamy and kleistogamy. As a reference part, we'll see what is homogamy. Homos means similar, gamy means the gametic whorls, that is the androecium and gynoecium, or reproductive organs, that is stigma and the anther, male reproductive and female reproductive structures. Now, in homogamy, both these androecium and gynoecium whorls, they mature at the same time. Means the anther get mature at the same time, stigma is mature and ready and becomes receptive. The condition is called as homogamy. So homogamy, homos means the same or similar. Gametes means the gametic whorls. They mature at the same time. Therefore, it is called as homogamy. Condition is called as homogamy. Flowers are referred as homogamous flowers. When the flowers in the flower, anther and stigma mature at the same time in a bisexual flower, then the condition is called as homogamy. Flowers are called as homogamous flower. Second is kleistogamy, when the flowers remain closed till fertilization. Sometimes rather they do not open even after fertilization. They remains closed. They remains covered by the accessory holes. The condition is called as kleistogamy, because the meaning of the word is kleistos means closed. Gamy means the gametic holes, that is the reproductive holes. So reproductive holes remains, kleistos means closed. they never open, then the condition is called as cleistogamy, and the flowers are called as cleistogamous flowers. For example, in case of Commelina bengalensis, this is the photograph of Commelina bengalensis you are seen in the nature. Generally, we people use it during Ganesh festival or Mahalakshmi festival. We use to offer it for the Lord Ganesha or Mahalakshmi. We call it as Aghada. So the Commelina bengalensis, and in case of viola, these cleistogamous flowers are seen. Now you can see here these are the chesmogamous flower, and I have told you that they produce the cleistogamous flower. Actually, this variety, that is Commelina bengalensis and viola, they produce two different types of flower. Chasmogamous flowers are produced aerially. To the aerial branches, such opened chasmogamous flowers are produced. In case of viola as well as in case of Commelina bengalensis. And it also produces the underground flowers. These creamy white flowers which appears in the form of creamy white buds. These are nothing but the cleistogamous flowers produced by Commelina. They remain closed during the till the fertilization is over and the ovules get converted into seed and the ovary into fruit. You can see these cleistogamous flowers in case of Commelina because it is a monocot plant and it can be easily uprooted. सहज त्याला उपटता येतं आणि तुम्हाला खालच्या भागाला अशा पद्धतीने क्लेस्टोगॅमस फ्लावर्स बघायला मिळतील नेचरमध्ये सुद्धा. And this plant is very popular weed, and now this is the onset of rainy season. You can easily see the cleistogamous flowers in Commelina. Viola, it is difficult to find out, but in Commelina you can see the cleistogamous flower. So both viola and that Commelina, they produce these cleistogamous as well as the chasmogamous flower. Now we'll switch on to the next slide. That is the biotic and abiotic agents. The biotic agents, the living agents are called as biotic agents. Abiotic agents, the non-living agents, only two non-living agents are there, that is wind and water. Now, accordingly, there are different types of pollination as anemophily, hydrophily, then entomophily, then and so on. That we'll see onwards. Okay. Now we'll see first the anemophily. How you can define anemophily? It is a wind pollination. How you can define the pollination which is carried with the help of the agency of wind? It is called as anemophily. It is generally seen in case of monocot plants like jawar, bajra, maize, grasses, and exceptionally in case of some of the aquatic plants like Potamogeton and Holgeris. It shows accordingly some certain adaptations with spatial features. Now it is a non-living agent, wind. Therefore, the flowers are colorless, they are odorless, they are nectarless. The flowers are produced just below the flag leaf. This uppermost leaf in the axilla of which this head or the inflorescence is developed, that is a flag leaf. So in the axilla of this flag leaf, the flowers are developed. They are in the hanging position because it is the pollination is carried with the help of wind, so they hang in the air. The pollen grains are lightweight and smooth walled. They are produced in large number because expecting the loss of pollen grains, because this is a non-living agency and does not know where to shade the pollen grains, and therefore the pollen grains are produced in large number. The filaments are exerted, they are long, and anthers are versatile. असे बाहेर लोंबलेले filaments असतात. They are long and they droop down outside the inflorescence, and the anthers are versatile. The meaning of versatile is the anthers can swing in any direction along the wind current. These are the drooped pollen grains, stamens and the pollen grains, and these are the versatile anthers which can swing in any direction. वारा हा पूर्वेकडनं येवो, पश्चिमेकडनं, उत्तरेकडनं, दक्षिणेकडनं, from whatever the direction the wind current is blown, along with the wind current, the anther it swings, and the pollen grains can be easily shed, and therefore the anthers are versatile. Stigma is hairy, feathery, or bifurcated. Kasha karta? So as to catch the pollen grain which are carried along with the wind current. Just like the आपण त्याला केरसुणी म्हणतो, त्या केरसुणीसारखा असा feathery किंवा hairy, bifurcated असा स्टिग्मा या wind pollinated flowers मध्ये असतो. So that the pollen grains coming along with the wind current, they can be easily trapped. They can be easily collected or catched by the stigma. In case of these flowers, their perianth is not ornamented in the form of petals, colored petals and sepals, etc. It is in the form of perianth, which is very pale in color and it is very reduced, very small. You cannot even see the perianth in case of wind pollinated flowers. In the perianth is called as loducules. A pair of loducules are present, which are very tiny and covered with the silky hairs, and you cannot visualize even. And example, the flowers are very small, inconspicuous, and not fruit, because there is no need for the ornamentation of flower, because the agency is non-living. So these are the adaptations shown by entomophilous flower. I'm sorry, by the anemophilous flower. Switch on to the next. That is the next pollinating agent, which is non-living. That is water. How you can define? The pollination which occurs by the agency of water, it is called as hydrophily. It is very simple definition. Pollination which is carried by the agency of water is called as hydrophily. It shows the adaptation that the flowers non-living agency आहे, the flowers are small, inconspicuous, फार prominent असे flower असत नाही. Perianth, generally the calyx carola is not colored, it is in the form of perianth, and the floral walls are unwettable. म्हणजे पाण्यामध्ये सहज डिकम्पोज होणार नाही, भिजणार नाही, अशा प्रकारे अनवेटेबल पेरियांथ असतो. Since it is covered with a mucilage or waxy coating. The plants are hydrophytes. Therefore, the perianth is unwettable, which is coated with a mucilage or the wax. Pollen grains are long, needle-like or ribbon-like. They are also wax-coated. Pollen grains are also unwettable and they are wax-coated or coated with the mucilage. Since it is a non-living agency, once again, the flowers do not produce nectar, the flowers do not produce fragrance. So there is absence of attractive colors, there is absence of nectar, there is absence of fragrance in case of hydrophilous flowers. Okay, so there are two different types of hydrophily. They are epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. That we'll discuss in the next our lecture. Now we'll stop the meeting over here and we'll exit.